Woo! Halloween is almost upon us, and I am fully in the Halloween spirit. I have been for a while. I don't need any help, and that's it. The end. Oh, but if any of you guys need help, I decided to make a list of Halloween media. Every year, I like to revisit some of my favorite Halloween media from my childhood because my favorite kind of Halloween spirit is like spooky Halloween as opposed to scary Halloween. Like if ghosts, instead of looking like they're in The Grudge, look like they're big squishy blobs with cartoon faces. That is the kind of Halloween I'm talking about. These aren't horror movies that are supposed to scare you. They are supposed to make you feel like you're a little kid and you're like sitting at home, drinking apple cider, about to go trick-or-treating. I made a list of my top 15. I already decided that the title's going to say 10. 10 just feels like a number that you put in titles, but it is 15. I made it 15 because I like a lot of things, so yeah. You're probably going to notice that a lot of this media is centered around a particular time frame because that's when I was a kid, across that span of time. So if you're a millennial, this list will be super relatable. If you're older than a millennial, you can like hate on me for being an uncultured swine and not knowing the Halloween stuff from your childhood. And if you're younger than me, you'll still relate to this because I think they just rerun all the same stuff today. They don't really make new stuff. Okay, now let's get to the list. Number 15 is Under Wraps.
That's a mummy! Cool! What are we gonna call him? How about Harold?
And it's up to these three kids to help him find his way back home.
This is a Disney Channel original movie, a DCOM. I didn't include them all, but make no mistake, Disney Channel completely delivers on Halloween movies. I think the reason they had so many when I was a kid is like maybe they were making a modest one per year and just by the time I was watching, they had accrued a lot of them. Under Wraps is set at Halloween time. It has the boy and his monster plot. It's maybe not the best DCOM, but it is like a very classic one that I always remember when I think about them. But that's why it's low on the list. I also just really appreciate that it's a mummy movie. I feel like mummies are one of those Halloween monsters that show up to like round out a lineup, but they aren't usually the star player themselves. I feel like Halloween monsters have like waves of relevance. Like you'll see the whole gang around every year, but if you have a keen eye like I do, you will notice that there are certain monsters that kind of rule certain years. Last year was witches and skeletons. This year is Frankensteins and scarecrows. So anyway, it's only a matter of time before mummies have their year, but until then we can watch Under Wraps. Number 14, I don't know why I tried to hold up fingers like I have 14 fingers. Number 14 is Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet the Wolf Man. I tried to foreshadow that this was going to be a weird list. It is. Yeah, when I was a kid, I liked Alvin and the Chipmunks, and this is their spookiest movie. They also have a movie where they meet Frankenstein, but I, as a discerning film critic, am too good for the Frankenstein movie, but I like the Wolfman one. This movie is about the Chipmunks having an evil next-door neighbor who is secretly the Wolfman, and he bites Theodore, who starts turning into a werewolf, and also they're putting on a school play of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and they get into some real mortal peril, and it's a musical. You're probably like, why did this movie need to star the Chipmunks? And like, that's kind of all the Chipmunk movies. There's no reason. The whole thing of the Chipmunks is that they're anthropomorphic chipmunks and they're music stars. And in most of their stories, only one of those things is relevant. And in this movie, neither of those things is relevant. It's just a complete story on its own. Like, even when they're singing, it's usually in narration to the audience, not actually singing in the events of the story. They're definitely not music stars because they're in a school play. I kind of wish this was just a Halloween story about brothers because it does kind of stand on its own, but I have to appreciate it for what it is, and I did always make time to watch it when it was on Cartoon Network. But I did put it low on the list because honestly, when you get older, trying to watch chipmunk voices becomes really intolerable. Maybe I'll just watch it at like 3/4 speed and have that nightmare experience.
Don't you get it? She's right. There's a monster on our own block. Oh, please.
Number 13 is Paranorman. It's set at Halloween time. It has retro horror kitsch. There are zombies. There's another school play. This one's about the Salem witch trials. Clearly I have beats, and it's hitting them all. I feel like a lot of you have already seen this movie. It doesn't really need my recommendation. And also I'm too ancient for it to be that nostalgic for me, so I put it kind of low on the list. And that's also why I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. But it's good. And that's why it deserved a place on here. This is on the list instead of Coraline, because Coraline is not a Halloween movie. It's set in the springtime. Number 12 is The Ghost and Mr. Chicken. This is the weirdest one on the list. I'm guessing a lot of you haven't seen it. It's a Don Knotts comedy about a cowardly reporter who has to spend the night in the local haunted murder house. It has a lot of memorable one-liners and some good spooky ambiance, like there's an organ that plays itself and a painting that bleeds blood. But what really tips it over the edge is the theme song, which will get stuck in your head forever once you hear it. Actually, if you look the theme song up on YouTube and you scroll down to the comments, all of the comments are people just retyping their favorite memorable one-liner. And like, most of the one-liners are different one-liners. That's a lot of memorable one-liners. I think that's a good endorsement. Number 11 is Don't Look Under the Bed. This is another Disney Channel original, but here's what makes it unique. This is considered the scariest of the Disney Channel originals. This movie is so scary, and so many parents complained that, I don't know if this is still the practice, but for a time, Disney would only show this movie once a year on Halloween night. The story itself is not overtly Halloween-y. It's about a teenage girl who's being terrorized by the boogeyman, and she has to try to stop it by teaming up with her little brother's imaginary friend. I liked how spooky this movie was. It had some cool locations. I thought the story was really creative, and also the stakes get a lot higher than some other Disney Channel movies of the time. It has some cool boogeyman and imaginary friend lore. It even has some twists throughout the story, which when I was a kid blew my mind. I don't know how they hold up because I can't recreate the experience of watching it for the first time, but like, maybe if you guys do, you can tell me. I always really loved this one, and I would probably put it higher if it had a little bit more to do with Halloween. Number 10 is the Boy Meets World Halloween Special, which is an episode called And Then There Was Sean. This is basically Scream for babies. They even have some jokes specifically referencing Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, but it worked, and it was funny, and it was bold to see Disney Channel doing a Halloween special where beloved characters are getting stabbed and crushed and shoved out of windows to their deaths. I don't think Hannah Montana ever did that for any holiday. I thought a lot of the jokes were solid, and it holds up, and it takes me back to a time when Disney Channel sitcoms were actually good. It's definitely that the new ones are bad, and the old ones were good. And it's not that I'm predisposed to like the ones from my childhood better and hate the unfamiliar, it's that the new ones are bad. The reason this special is on the lower half of the list is that they tried to justify its place in the overarching story of the show, and it's really weird. Like, Boy Meets World follows these characters through years of their lives, and it tracks their developing relationships, and God forbid they have one Halloween episode where they take a break from that. This Halloween special has to be important to the canon. So instead of just having a framing device like, oh, one of the characters had a nightmare, they have to make it part of some psyche-shattering revelation about how Sean needs his friends' relationships to succeed because of his own baggage from coming from a broken home.
Why are you doing this to us?
It was really weird, especially when you're watching it when you're like 6. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. Oh my god, please let this get enough views to justify getting glitter all over my room. Number 9 is Are You Afraid of the Dark? The quality of these was pretty consistent, so I feel like you couldn't really go wrong with just picking one and jumping in, but it did feel like cheating to pick a whole series. So for a quick impression, I would recommend The Tale of the Shiny Red Bicycle, The Tale of the Laugh in the Dark, and The Tale of the Silent Servant. I like them all for different reasons, but the last one has a scarecrow, and remember, 2018 is the year of the scarecrow. Let's cough drop it up. I feel so out of it. I think I do have a fever. I mean, I'm also wearing a sweater and a hot hat. A lot of Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes are based on urban legends, and some of them feel straight up stolen from Goosebumps or Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. That's why this one isn't higher on the list. And also, I said the quality was consistent. I didn't say it was consistently great. The real strength is just the total package. The title, the theme song, just seeing the theme song and the intro stuff come on when I was a kid would terrify me and send me running out of the room. I was a very cowardly child. The framing device is so good, where there's this secret society of kids who meet in the woods at night to tell scary stories around a campfire. There are better horror anthologies, but I can't have a Halloween list without including this show.